Thank you, Gurleen, for the various introductions. Good day, everyone. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam.
Continuing with the success of 2020, where we hosted 104 leading CIOs in our cross-border panel discussion. We are pleased to move forward with this initiative in 2021 as well, inviting the top CIOs to participate in our cross-border panel discussion. As part of the World CIO 200 Roadshow 2021, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar edition, and on behalf of Global CIO Forum and its sponsor partners, I welcome the panelists here with me to this cross-border panel on leadership in the post-pandemic era. And what will drive leadership in this post-pandemic recovery phase for the next 12 to 24 months? So let us begin. We will have 3 rounds of discussion with the panelists here across the next 45 minutes. We are going to discuss about how businesses have led their technology heads to revamp infrastructure and application, and now they're looking at vastly improved customer experience, higher returns from sales, business resilience, and business continuity. So let's start with the questions for the panelists. I'd like to start with you, Zubair. You have a long baseline in banking, working with the bank Al Falah and recently Apna Microfinance. So you have a good understanding of the dynamics between business and IT. So give us an idea, what were your killer applications and killer technologies in the last 18 to 24 months, if I can call them killer, which really helped to get your business through these very challenging times. Any thoughts on that? Anything which you can share? Go ahead, Zubair.
Sure. Thank you for providing me this opportunity over here. First of all, I would like to give a brief, initially, rather talking about the application directly. I would say after this pandemic, the DNA of leadership has been totally changed. Initially we were always looking at the CEOs or operation heads to get a drive in which direction we need to move. But after this pandemic, everybody is looking at the IT, technology. They want the innovation. They want the cost effective. They want the controls. They want to simulate many things by sitting in far longer areas. So this is not only a challenge, but a very good thing to hear that being the IT head or CIO of a company, I'm glad to drive these things, from by leading from the front. Now I would say that leadership, it was used to be totally different ball game before this pandemic. Now I would say the e-leadership is there, or hybrid leadership has been introduced, because your staff, half of your staff is working from home, and there are different pandemic policies or regulations in different countries. Plus most of the things are like quite same in all over the world. And this was the challenge, that how to control these staffs, not only by controlling the security measures that they are connecting to the companies from their locations, but also to maintain their interest, maintain their regulatory regulations, so that they don't get out of the routine of being the part of organization or being employed. So these challenges were, initially it was very hard, because the shift was very paradigm shift, and it was a very quick shift. So it was not easy to cope up with it initially, but we learned from it, and management supported. And now we are on the move, we are on the pace with the smoothly towards that we can manage these things remotely. As far as technology is concerned, which enabled my organization to get the benefit or the killer technology in your terms, it was the digitization of account onboarding. The relation of any customer starts with the account with the bank, if I talk about banking sector particularly, and that relation is much more important than any other activities of the customer in the branch. And our regulator is very much focused on it. The compliance are quite strict, and if we just evaluate or just look into the things, that most of the problems occurred due to the relations which was not healthy, or which was not done on the proper grounds given by the regulator or your policy accordingly. So it is very important. So what we did that we started onboarding our customer digitally, even they're at home, so they can open an account by sitting there at home. So this is now the State Bank is very much into it. They've also over here the regulator they are supporting it, they are fully focusing it, and they are asking the banks to do these kind of measures. And the second big thing what we did is it was the launch of internet and mobile banking. We being a microfinance bank, we are not that big bank, and definitely the appetite of digitization is not much there. But contrary, we had to reduce the cost of onboarding and increase the reach to our customer by not expanding much, by not doing the capital expenditure. So the idea was to, being the one leading from the front, I had to keep this in mind, that there should not be much of the cost involved by launching any product or any new application or any new procedural stuff, which would lately affect contrary by increasing the expense. That is the gray area which needs to be addressed all the time. And being a smaller bank as well, and generally one should focus on it. So by launching the internet and mobile banking, we reduced the footfall of our customer and gave an ease to the customer to do the transaction remotely from their home, from any of the places. And this we seek a very positive response in it, and the customer was quite intact. They were very happy. Naturally, we were not the pioneer by launching this. There were many other applications, but we had a benefit that we get the crux from all the applications and put in by optimize our application, which was smooth, easy to understand, and quite flexible in it. So these were the two areas which were introduced by the technology, by IT in the bank, and we are going to do much more. We haven't stopped, and because now it has become inevitable to do the technology growth by introducing the application, not the conventional IT. Now the IT is a business basically. Now IT drives the business of the bank. They give the direction. CIOs are being me myself. Now I am the one who is initiating any new product by giving them that this is the system we can launch, and we can get the maximum benefit. We can get the revenues out of it. So it is very good for me to be the part of management like this, to contribute by generating new revenue streams. And we are lined up with quite a couple of new applications as well, which would naturally help my bank to reduce the cost and increase the customer engagement.
Sorry. So the killer application, the killer technology would have been digitization, the onboarding, the whole onboarding process. And just to cross-check over there, you mentioned about reporting. So when the employees were all remote, how were you actually do the remoting? Was it some sort of morning, evening type of Zoom call? Was it some sort of sign in or something like that? What was the reporting?
You cannot diversify much in reporting mechanism across the world. We all seek that there's always a way out of reporting things. So it was the first thing what we did. We gave a proper a learning to the staff that how to get on board, and gave a proper leverage to them. We didn't push them to the wall that you have to do this thing. So being IT, first of all, I'll let you know that work from home for me as an IT person and my department was not at all there. So we were we were there 24/7 here. Rather, we were doing things on stretch basis, that we had to introduce many things and on war footing basis. So we were burning the midnight oils. But yes, for the rest of who were the operational part and things like that. So we introduced a simple mechanism of being you have to log in. We gave them a login. We gave them a system which was in-house developed to onboard, and everyone had a password, and that was secured pathway to approach the bank. We need to keep the security aspect as well. So it is then the rest was on the honesty of the person. So we had to believe it.
Very interesting. Thank you, Zubair. So, Umesh, I'd like to move over to you now. Now, Bin Dasmal Group, engineering group. So, obviously, we saw a lot of ups and downs in construction and engineering in 2020 during the pandemic. Also, I see you have considerable formal education in, let's say, leadership and management. So, from your point of view, what were the sort of steps that you had to take inside your organization in terms of technologies or any other process changes or things like that to cope with those challenges that the engineering sector was facing during that time? Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Arun, for having me in this discussion. As you rightly said, Bindaspal Group is a diversified group of companies, and we are basically into the verticals which are associated with mostly with the construction industry. So we are into manufacturing space, into sales and distribution, contracting, services. So if we see that technological part, we use various applications, various tools to communicate within the organization and with customers and suppliers. Now, most important tool for us is our core business application, which is an ERP application and CRM application. And along with that is our email communications, which goes with the customers internally and with the suppliers. I would say that our leadership had understood the cloud technology quite early on, and they adopted it very quickly. From 2011 onwards, we have been using our email infrastructure in the cloud. So we are one of the early adopters of cloud technologies in our business environment. And as far as our business applications are concerned, just before the pandemic, we had shifted our ERP and CRM applications from on-premise to the cloud infrastructure. So we have been using our ERP and CRM in infrastructure as a service and a platform as a service. And we have some other applications like field service management and service related applications which are on the SaaS model. So some of our infrastructure is maintained in-house for using regular file servers and other housekeeping utility servers within the premise. And our core applications and core utilities are used on the cloud. So we have been maintaining the hybrid environment for quite a long time. And as the pandemic started, we had the main challenge of how we enable the workforce to work remotely. So for that also, we have been using remote work for the people who were into sales or who were traveling outside and who were demanding sometimes to connect to the office network and work remotely for some time. So we did have the infrastructure in place. It just needed to be scaled out as per the requirement arose. Now, as the pandemic started, the first thing was to how to enable it at the scale and how secure it would be. So our main concern was to provide the connectivity to our people, to our employees in a secure manner, so that our data, our assets, our servers, they are not exposed to the threats outside. We had collaborated with business units for this, and we had taken into consideration the types of devices they are using to connect remotely. Some people were using laptops, some people were using desktops, some people were using tablets and mobiles. So we had to evaluate the threats according to the device type and then provide the connectivity based on that. So it was a very exhaustive exercise to get the configuration of all the devices, and then based on the role of the person who is going to connect remotely, to analyze which kind of environment we have to provide them and how we have to provide them the secure access. So I would say that our core applications and our infrastructure for remote workforce enablement was already in place. We had to enable it. We have to scale it out to the extent when the pandemic started. So that was a challenge which we had to go through, and our management and our business people, they were quick to provide the decision making, and we are able to do it.
So very interesting, and obviously the killer applications being SaaS, PaaS, and IaaS. So it's very nice to know that the Bin Dasmal Group is using ERP and CRM from the cloud, and quite a mature way of working, and very interesting about the challenges of mapping all the devices and the policies on security. So great work over there. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, so let's move to you now, Praful. So Praful, as I can see, very long baseline in Al Jazeera and the airlines before that with Air India and CMS Infosystems. So obviously you understand the complete business dynamics of the let me say civil aviation, if I can put it like that. And the transportation, airlines, aviation was definitely a sector which was really impacted in the last 18 to 24 months, and you are now in the ramp up stage. So what were the key technology changes, transformations that you had to do to align and keep business moving, although it was highly challenged? Go ahead, Praful.
Thank you, Arun, for this invitation, as well as putting that right question, because as you rightly said, the airline and the travel industry were having the heaviest toll during this last 18 months. So even to go to some extent, I would say that at one point, it was even the case of sustaining the business. And I'm happy that we have overcome that situation very positively as a team. There were continuous challenges in the new forms across the business departments. And as Zubair said, everybody looking at the IT for the solutions, because this was the time when people could not meet their teams to give different instructions or the ideas. So I believe the two major things or the technologies which helped us as an airline to move forward, the most important is the collaboration tools, and the second is on the process automations. Because as an airline industry and the operations, the continuous collaboration with different teams is very critical, as when you have the passengers on ground, you can't wait for someone not to provide right information. So collaboration was one of the very important part. And there were a lot of fear during the pandemic time when people do not want to gather in a bigger numbers, or at the same time do not want to have a physical interaction with different people. And that is where the, you can say, touchless travel kind of a concept, wherein people do not want even to touch the papers to verify those PCR certificates and their travel documents and all the stuff. So that is one aspect wherein all the check-in agents or the operation staff or even the customers want to have something which enables them a safe travel. So going on to the earlier stage wherein we had to answer back to the challenges of the business in the initial period of COVID, wherein we had to work with limited budget, as the airline industry, the cash flow was bare minimum. Resources were working all remotely, and we had to provide the solutions at the speed of light. And one more factor which came in during this period is the government entities. Usually, the airline operations are managed by the airlines end to end, except those immigration and custom checkpoints. this particular period, one more new entity which came into picture is the Ministry of Health. And they were very stringent on their procedures as well as the compliance guidelines. So the integration with their system was like, if you ask me before pandemic period, it was like a no-go. They will not open their systems for any data interchange, exchange. And this time, that was something which came out as a very positive thing. And we had to provide deep integrations within to their systems with the passenger information, with the passenger other travel documents and all related items. So we had to actually think out of the box for many of the solutions. I'll give you an example. Usually the airport operations, you must have seen people talking on the walkie-talkies. Now, walkie-talkies has certain limitations in the distance. So we had to think that how we can enhance this when people are spread across the country remotely, and how they would collaborate. So then we came across this telecom with push to talk over the 4G network. So it broke all the distance limitations and any barrier. So this kind of items wherein the IT inputs were very, very critical, and IT leadership had to think very differently than what we used to think earlier. So these were some of the challenges and the responses to the situation we had to provide, I would say.
So very interesting over there, especially the part about the collaboration and the process automation. But one question that keeps coming up for the airlines was the amount of refunds and re-ticketing. Did you have to modify the financial applications of the passenger reservation system to take the scale? Because we heard, from a lot of airlines about the large number of backlog in, the refunds and all that. Did you have to make any modifications to your core applications for that? Go ahead, Praful.
So we could not modify these core applications, but at the same time, we did a lot of enhancements to the internal applications, wherein we pull out the data directly from the reservation system, analyze it, understand which all refund requests have come from the passengers, cancel those segments directly on the reservation system, and putting the data directly onto the financial system. So we had to create a middleware which used to do all the functions automatically. I mean, that really reduced the load on the call center as well as the finance, because this was the period when everybody were anxious to get the information from call center and the call center working at a limited capacity due to, again, the same physical constraints. So this middleware and the applications which we had to roll out at a record time, that was something, as Zubair said, burning the midnight oil works well for IT. Goes same everywhere.
So very interesting. I mean, it's almost as if the airlines were functioning like a banking application based on the huge number of transactions which were, like you said, moving from this side or that side. So thank you for those inputs, Praful. Very interesting over there. So I'd like to come to you, Dr. Sunil, the last in the line. And Dr. Sunil, you have been in the formal, if I should say, academic side. You have a PhD in computer science, which is quite rare. And if you were in the commercial side, I'm quite sure you could have leveraged that quite interestingly. But I guess you're slightly on the academic side. Can you give us an idea of how things have looked like in the technology institutes? Go ahead, please, Dr. Sunil.
Thank you, Ranjit. Good evening, everyone present in this very wonderful session. In fact, academics was something probably which was impacted the most, because in every business vertical, people up to some extent were ready with their IT digitization, and they were working on the processes since long. But in academics, no, and that too in formal education, where full-time programs, whether graduation or post-graduation or doctoral level programs are offered, no one even would have thought of that all these full-time courses are going to be offered in online mode. And that was probably the biggest challenge. At most of the places, you will appreciate that video conferencing is something which is common in industry, other verticals. But in academia, this video conferencing is something which is considered to be a luxury. But since we installed this video conference facility way back in 2008, so at least we were having that edge that our faculty members were using these video conferencing to communicate, to take sessions, sometimes even when they are on off. So this in this pandemic scenario, the biggest challenge was to keep things on, because this was something which we could not afford to keep on hold for a longer duration. I still remember it was 17th of March when in the state of UP in India, the lockdown was imposed initially for 3 weeks. And then subsequently on 22nd March, our Honorable Prime Minister announced that countrywide lockdown was imposed. So we had just 24 to 40 hours, 48 hours to do all those things so that academics could continue. And when we got this information, because university was in no way ready to keep things on hold, our stakeholders, we started getting calls from parents, from students, that how things are going to continue like that, because ultimately they had to write their examinations too after 2 months' time. So thanks to my team of faculty, thanks to these students, that we started conducting training programs, and just in 24 hours, we trained our all faculty members. We had to train these students because 3,000 odd students, around 50 odd sections. Initially getting connected on digital platform was an entirely new experience. There were certain challenges which were forcing us to go for more number of sessions and make people comfortable. But we were probably the first institution in the entire state of UP who migrated on digital platform within 48 hours. Now, conducting course was something which was a bit easier, because as Professor was mentioning, that the collaboration tools were available. We were using it for last almost 10 years. So people found it easier to migrate on it. But then the biggest challenge was how to go for evaluation and assessment. Because ultimately assessment had to be done, evaluation had to be done. And then during that assessment process, that examination process, we didn't have that luxury to go for proctored examination. So we tried to find out certain LMSs, and then we went for auto-proctored examinations with the application of AI up to some extent. And that's how probably we were able to deliver what we are expected for. So the technology which helped us in this entire process was, of course, number one was the collaboration tool, which at least started things going on. Then we have our infrastructure on cloud. So that cloud migration on cloud well in time was something which was really very helpful. We were able to extend the facility. We were able to extend all these required infrastructure to the faculty, to the students, so that they could connect, they could get the contents on demand. I will not, on demand will not be the right word to use, but at least on their the flexibility was there. Whenever they wanted, everything was available. And then, of course, this AI and machine learning based systems in conducting the examination, online examinations, was something which helped us in keeping ball rolling. And 1.5 years back, the things which used to be normal, now when things are settling down, now people have started coming to the premise. Even students' limited movement have started in campus. We see those old normals are being redefined. This the learnings of this 1.5 years, it has created a kind of awareness which otherwise would have taken about a decade or more than a decade. So that massive awareness about technology, availability of different tools, the systems, and that readiness of academic institution, though it was compulsion, it was forced, but now everyone has realized the taste of these technologies and these principles. And that's what are going to remain there, even if everything backs to normal. At least now every institute is ready to follow the blended learning, where some part of, major part would be in conventional mode, but some part would be in online mode, because it helps us reaching out to the people the guests were here, if I request someone out of this panel to address to our faculty or interact with our faculty, at least this online platform helps that without any physical movement, we still can communicate. So that blended learning at least is going to be the outcome of this entire process, which every institution, even if they would not have thought of going for digitization, they would also be staying back with that.
Thank you, Dr. Sunil. Very interesting. I just want to discuss one point over here. During the examination and evaluation, how were you identifying the correct student? And you mentioned something about AI. How was that verification done? Go ahead, please.
Yeah. The one thing, we formed smaller groups of students, and every student was asked to keep their camera on. And when the application, the LMS we use for the evaluation process, that application has that feature that if certain movement of his eyes goes out of certain degree, that is beyond the screen, it immediately comes up with a warning that this movement is not allowed. And after 3 warnings, automatically it forces students to log out. So initially, when a few students experience this kind of process, then message was very clear among all that these things are not going to work. So this helped us largely to keep things on.
So very, very fascinating. And I'm sure I would have liked to continue discussing this, but we need to continue with the objectives of the panel. So I'd like to move to the second round of discussion, and coming back to you, Zubair. Now, Zubair, all of us have worked as technology heads, have worked closely with the business. And obviously during these last 18, 24 months, like Dr. Sunil was saying, a huge amount of awareness change, a situational awareness as to what is successful, how to collaborate, how to take decisions together. So from your point of view in your organization over there, what were the sort of changes that you had to do or business had to do to collaborate and come out in a much more effective fashion with technology? Go ahead, Zubair.
Well, yes, I would say that technology, being the main business of any company, is okay. They keep on investing in it, but in other organizations, technology was always considered as a supporting role. You know, they were not given that much of the budget. They were always asked, you should keep your things quite tight, and but keep on doing things on a in a slower pace. But after this pandemic, the business, every eye was, as Praful was said, every eye was on the IT side. What are they doing? What are they coming up with? And the major role was also played by the regulator over here in Pakistan. In banking sector particularly, if I would say that technology is there, banks are investing in it, but the pace is not that much there unless until the regulator give them a push. So during this pandemic, they played a very vital role, and that inculcated in our organization simultaneously. It was a very big change, and we had to do very emergency kind of years during this pandemic, because there was a challenge that the people were not able to come to the offices due to lockdown, and the health issues, and you have to maintain the certain pandemic measures. So there were quite challenges. So the business came up with that, how to continue the business, how to do things. As earlier it was mentioned by one of the participants that the cloud technology they used, but over here there are certain restrictions about cloud technologies. Banking sector, they are not allowed to do the cloud. They're not allowed to cloud technology apart from 1 or 2 particular applications, or non-banking application, if I would say in general terms. So in non-banking applications, you can say that it's a WhatsApp banking, which is recently introduced in Pakistan, or the email, you would say that it's a non-banking application. So these are the things which can be kept on cloud, and it was also allowed for the last 1 year. Previously, everything has to be on prime. So the cost of managing it, cost of having it was too much high. But now State Bank is moving towards that things should be moved on cloud, and they're just testing for the core banking and the other mainframe technologies, so applications which should be run on the cloud. I'm sure they would take this decision quite quickly now. But in my organization, it was a challenge how to run these things by putting all things together. Management came to us, and they were like, initially what happens, the core committees were performed, which were meeting on the regular times, and they were seeing the technology implications or technology gaps which needs to be filled immediately. Naturally, there was a need of an investment in it, but what we had it, we came up with an optimal solutions. So as it was like it was a challenge, but by moving towards it slowly and gradually, now we are quite matured. Management said that we need to keep the first thing was the business as bow, and it needs to be going on. And so we managed that. We had different conferencing solutions, as Dr. Sunil mentioned earlier. We had it in our premises, but it is quite easy because we, being the bank, we are equipped with the gadgets, internet devices. But again, the challenge was that how to maintain the security so that there would not be any leakage, because the quite a hacking incidents are going on across the world nowadays as the technology is growing too. So I would say the challenge was there, how to keep the cost intact, how to keep the business going on. And yes, but now we are immune to it, we are used to it, and we are living with it. And they're seeing the benefit out of it.
Okay, great, Zubair. I'll just like to cut short a little bit here because we're going to be running out of time very fast, and I do want to get inputs in from the others. So, Umesh, over to you. 2 minutes, please, if we can get the answer. Your collaboration with business, what changed? How was it effective? Go ahead, Umesh.
Yeah, so as I said earlier also, and as Zubair also highlighted, that the digital transformation was already going on. The pandemic has increased and accelerated its pace. Okay, so Bindaspur Group stretched its ability to go digital as much as possible by having a strong technological foundation and processes and taking along with the people. Okay, so we had differentiated ourselves by having a readiness with terms of technological foundations. Okay, so as the pandemic arrived, we had to respond very quickly. We have to see in multiple horizon perspective, like what we have to do in the short term and what we have to do in the long term. So short term was to immediately respond to the situation, stabilize the business operations, stabilize the collaborations and the communication between the teams, between the business units. And so the work does not stop, business does not stop. It will hamper more to the business because there was already lockdown was happening. So we had to respond in a very quick way and very optimal way, which the business did. We collaborated. We created the core teams. We had a IT team. We discussed internally from technological perspective what actions we have to take by providing the remote work enablement facility to the users. Uh, uh, how we have to make the environment secure, how the users will adopt the culture. Okay, there was a big shift into the culture. Okay, how we have to bring in the awareness between the users about the security. Uh, 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 so we had to go reach out to the users, again give them trainings about the awareness of the threats and vulnerabilities which were there, and they could face connecting digitally and during this time, because the attack area had increased by going digital in all the areas. So these were the actions we had taken along with the business units. We required a lot of support from the business side because they were the ultimate users of digital technologies. Okay, we were just enabling the technologies. We were helping them to overcome the issues which had suddenly come due to pandemic, and we collaborated with them and the senior leadership. Wherever we had required their intervention, we asked them to intervene and provide their guidance and their instructions, how to go about and how to deal with the situation. We provided them the tools to communicate in terms of video conferencing, and we provided them the connectivity towards the main and core ERP and CRM applications. So, but there was a strong business IT collaboration happened, which was not that much strong before the pandemic. So, IT is the collaboration with business, and now it becomes very stronger. And in the future, I think this trend will continue. And as I said, from being enabler to the driver, the IT has come into the driver's seat, and it will drive the business and its activities and operations further.
Thank you very much over there, Umesh. Quite a large number of interesting points, but the one point which I like, which after so many cross-border panels, I finally heard, which is big shift in culture. Many of the panelists in previously in the other discussions generally have not mentioned this, but I see you bringing this up, and that is a cultural change of working with digital technologies and the empowerment of employees to use digital technologies and to drive their productivity. So Praful and Dr. Sunil, we have very less time, but I do want to quickly get in your input. So Praful, collaboration with business, what do you remember as the most significant part? Go ahead, please.
As the flights were stopped, all the country borders were closed. We had a meeting with our leadership team, and we called that meeting as a ground zero meeting. No aircraft flying. Usually we have a leadership meeting once in a week, but during these times we had almost 3 times a week. So you can understand how much collaboration went within the business teams. We used to discuss about all the new information, new changes within the different business on different countries, regulations, restrictions, some of the approvals. So I think the leadership team collaboration was at the highest level, I would say. And everybody within the team, every business entity within the team were very collaborative to find out solutions for the problems which were never tackled earlier. With the brainstorming and finding out the digital possible ways. There was another aspect was, even though the offices were closed and people are working remotely, as Umesh and Zubair mentioned, the hackers were the most active people during this time. And they were targeting whenever there are more number of holidays or people are not very attentive. There are huge trends in during this period of the different hacking attempts. So I think as IT, we had to fight on multiple aspects. One was on providing IT as a business enabler function to provide innovative solutions to the business. At the same time, protecting all the infrastructure and the IT systems from the cybersecurity. So I believe the interactions between business, peers, government entities has increased a lot, and that has given a new way of working as a public-private partnership or collaboration between different teams. So,
very interesting. Very interesting, Praful. And obviously, the government doing its best to keep the aviation industry, civil aviation industry afloat, and of course, continuously working with you closely. And we all know about the large number of assets which were on the ground. And now the emphasis is to get the human resources and the assets back into the skies because passengers are on the move. So very fascinating. And Dr. Sunil, if you can in 1 minute or two just quickly capture how you had to work with the student community and the obviously owners of the student community, bring it up, and then I have one more killer question before we close. So go ahead, Dr. Sunil.
Yes, as our fellow panelists have mentioned about the collaboration and how they responded to it. Its academics was also not an exception to this. In fact, this pandemic, this forced situation, have created an environment where everyone was forced to go for out of box thinking. This has created a wonderful opportunity for the people, those who are seriously into academics and who wanted to keep things continue. Just I would like to quote here an example that every year we organize one entrepreneurship summit, where normally we invite entrepreneurs who are in Delhi NCR, because we are based in Delhi NCR region. So we find it easier to get people. Last year, it was in August 2020 when this pandemic COVID-19 fear was on its extreme. When we tried when we started planning about this event, we thought, why not? Because since things had to be in online mode, we thought, why not to approach people, those who are in other countries too. And to our surprise, we got so wonderful response. The people from United States, from Singapore, from Malaysia, from Poland, means number of European countries we got. And then when we started discussion on this entrepreneurship, now entrepreneurship is something where the local factors are also playing very important role. The value system, which Umeshji was mentioning, that thought process plays very important role. So what we found that in the context we think about entrepreneurship, if context changes, the thought process also gets impacted by it. So at least what we gain from this, that we started looking at different perspective, which makes that local thinking of entrepreneurship to see in global perspective. So those global inputs had really helped not only to faculty, but to the students. See, we have around 32 states in India, and around 1,500 odd people had joined, covering 27 plus states in that event. So the kind of collaboration, the kind of joining hand and working together, it was really something which was amazing. So I think this has opened new doors. This has given taste to the people in academia also, that if they can exploit technology, it can open new doors of opportunities, new doors of joining hands together to conduct joint research, to carry out joint research papers, and lots of things are happening. And last 1 year, we came up with around 7 papers, which we have written. We just recently published a book with Springer, and this is all done jointly. I myself is a part of it. From Poland, there are 2 authors, and from other European countries there. So that join hands together, it really had given a new way of thinking, new way of looking at the collaborative work. So I think this is going to remain there.
Very, very fascinating about how, so obviously with tools like Zoom and other collaboration tools, distance doesn't matter, and it's very easy to share thoughts. So absolutely fascinating discussions coming across. But before we close, I want to ask my killer question about the killer technology. So Umesh, you talked about ERP and CRM in the cloud as being the basis, give you confidence to manage the business. 30 seconds. What will be your killer application 2 years from now? Quick thought on that, please.
Quickly, I picked 2 killer applications or tools. Now, workplace environment has changed. It is not going to be the same as it was before pandemic. So, workplace culture, the new workplace culture, based on that, the tools will be developed, like communication tools, remote workplace, and digital tools to handle the jobs remotely. Those kind of tools are much more required than having a physical presence in the office. And secondly, I would say process automation is going to play a big part into that. Process automation is very much required, and it is gaining the momentum as more and more process business wants to automate.
Fantastic. I like the part about the managing the culture and helping the workforce to integrate. That would be a very, very important part. Praful, your take, what would be your killer technology? Let's say all business comes back and starts scaling. What would you require 24 months from now? Go ahead, Praful.
I think first and foremost importance for our industry and many other in travel industry would be digital identity. I think that will enhance the touchless travel throughout the whole journey. and it will give a better customer experience, better operational experience, even productivity on the government side as well. So I think that is one of the first technology, I would say. And the second, I would again agree with Umesh on the process automation. I think that will continue to leverage in many different areas of the business. And the more automation comes in, the more efficiency within the company will be generated.
Absolutely fascinating. Yes, robotic process automation is here to stay in a big way. It will only go up and up. Zubair, your thoughts, which will be your technology 2 years from now, but only 30 seconds, please. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, I think my fellow members, they've already mentioned that the process automation, it's a yes everywhere. Naturally, because this would not only reduce the cost, but again would help that if we come across any other situation like this, so we can make our business on the go. Secondly, we are working on the paperless and digital identification of a customer. So this is something very interesting, and this would not only help our staff to develop a culture of wasting a paper, which is very much there across the world, and we should move towards it, but would help us to reduce the cost of organization to many-fold. And digital identification, there are some things which we can take an initiatives, but we are bound by the regulation. So luckily, the regulator or the regulations, the identifier, the NADRA over here, who is the main database for identification, they have allowed us, or the banks or the industry, to go for the digital identification of a customer. So I'm sure these two things are very much there, and across the board, we are agreed to it.
Very interesting over there, Zubair, especially the digital and the move to paperless. That is pretty much a high requirement now. Dr. Sunil, closing notes from you. You mentioned about the tracking the eyes. I think artificial intelligence, machine learning, biometrics of students would be a key part. Sorry, go ahead, please. What would be the killer technologies for you? Go ahead.
I think, I think in next 2 to 3 years down the lane, I see the applications which will combine 4 pillars of technology, which will include cloud, AI, and machine learning, which will create enormous volume of data. So data analytics is going to play a very important role, which will be well supported for distribution of this dissemination of created and analyzed information through fast mobile networks. The saying of Alvin Toffler is going to be proven correct: learn, unlearn, and relearn. Because the way technology is moving forward, we will see different technologies, different applications coming on faster pace, giving way to new kind of application where different technologies would be converging and giving birth to different new technologies. So learning, unlearning, and relearning is going to be the key.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sunil. I'm happy to register in one of your courses wherever I can do this whole thing in one shot: learn, unlearn, and relearn. Happy to join your institute. So with that, with this absolutely fascinating thought leadership from all our 4 panelists here, I'd like to come to the end of this cross-border panel discussion. And on behalf of Global CIO Forum, the World CIO 200 sponsor, partners, and the panelists here, Zubair, Praful, Umesh, and Dr. Sunil, I thank all the online attendees for sitting through these 45+ minutes of absolutely engaging content, and look forward to seeing you once again. Goodbye, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.